Hi, Zizaran here with another Last Epoch guide, and this is a collab with McFluffin. If you are a D2 fan or a Diablo fan in general and you loved Blessed Hammer, then this build is absolutely going to be for you. It is amazing at damage, amazing at clear, and you know what? There's no better way to show this off than by McFluffin introducing the build and showing us a little bit of what it's all about.
This build is definitely up the alley for people who played Diablo 2 and enjoyed Hammerdin, but it adds a little bit extra flash to it as well. So if you're used to the spiraling hammers kind of play style, that's exactly what this is. You're going to throw hammers out, they're going to spiral around, they're going to hit enemies, but the big twist is that when you hit them with hammers, it has a chance to proc Smite, which is this really cool spell that just rains down from the sky and blasts the enemy and does tons of damage. So that's the primary damage we do from it. We also have Shield Rush, which will allow us to get around. We're using Holy Aura, and we're using Vault's Reversal to buff our damage and our defenses even further. The build gets even more powerful when we burn down our mana, so I'm going to burn it down here, and you'll see I'll do a lot more damage to Hierot, and the numbers just get much crazier. So this is a great build for people who like to just juice their builds and kind of manage things and just get even more powerful when they need to.
So what are some of the downsides of Blessed Hammer?
Yeah, so the biggest downside is probably the management side. You have multiple buffs that you need to account for, and also you want to stay at a low level of mana. So you see I'm down here under 100 mana. If I'm not careful, I could run out of mana and in the wrong time. Like if I needed to move around with Shield Rush, it could get me in a lot of trouble. So it is something that people need to account for, be cognizant of when in the build. It's not just go in and just press one button. There's definitely a lot of management to it. It's also not one of the fastest builds in the game. It's got a lot of great damage and a lot of great clear, but there's builds that will farm a lot faster than this build will.
Yeah, this is a very, very familiar build for those of us that loved and played D2.
It's an iconic playstyle, and I think Last Epoch did a great job of capturing that, but then adding their own flavor.
And if you're not familiar with Last Epoch as well, I do have a lot of beginner guides and how to play Last Epoch and how to get into it on my channel. And if you're interested, a great way to support the channel is that you can buy Last Epoch through my Nexus link, which is in the description down below, and I get a kickback. For those of you that are familiar with my Path of Exile guides, you might be used to a third-party tool called Path of Building. However, Maxroll basically has all of that built into it. So this is very, very beautiful, and everything has things you can hover over them to see exactly what something does. And they've put a lot of work into making this. So this is the actual end game guide. There is a how to get to level 70 as well. And we'll talk a little bit about what you need to be able to switch over. But a thing that I really want to show off and point out is everything here is very step by step. So this is the allocated skill points for each skill. And you can see that it actually shows up which one you're taking as you're gaining that skill point. So you know exactly at what point you're assigning each skill. And there's no difference for the skill tree. Here is like where you're assigning things. It even will automatically switch through which skill tree you need, because you need some in the Paladin, some in the Sentinel, some in the Void Knight. So very, very easy to follow, even going between the multiple trees. And honestly, such a detailed guide and really, really wonderful. And then here with gear progression as well, you can see that early on, there is no crazy uniques you need. But we'll talk a little bit here in a bit about exactly what you need to swap over. But the bottom line is that this is a build that you can start playing the league with. And you start with a beginner guide, which is even more basic. And then with the few things you need, you'll be able to switch over to this and play the Blessed Hammer build, which hopefully for you is a blast from the past from Diablo 2. So for the leveling guide, what's the big difference and why do we level with it?
So the biggest difference is that a little ways into it, you're going to switch out of hammer throws. You'll start with hammer throws, but then you're going to switch over to Holy Trail Javelin. And we're going to switch to that because it's just better during leveling. There's a period of time where hammer throws is okay, but it's not nearly as powerful as Holy Trail. So you'll be able to level a lot faster, a lot more efficiently with Holy Trail. And then eventually you get to go back into the hammer throw setup once you get the right gear. The only thing you really need to have to switch to the main build are the adorned Rhea idols that have chance to cast Smite when you hit with throwing attacks. Without those, you can't actually proc Smite with your hammer throws. So as soon as you have a few of those, you can switch, but ideally you're going to have 4 of those so that you get the maximum number of procs. And if you happen to have Devotion at the same time, even better, you'll do even more damage.
So how do I target farm these idols and how do I get devotion?
So the idols are pretty RNG, but the best way to target them is to hit up idol echoes in the Monolith of Fate. So every time you see one, go hit it. And then you can also get the blessing that increases the likelihood that you will get adorned idols. It's not a big difference, but any chance helps, right? But mostly it's going to be farming echoes. As far as the devotion goes, that's going to be an amulet. It's a unique amulet. So there are a couple of ways that you can go ahead and farm that. The first one is you can go to the Age of Winter timeline in the Monolith of Fate, which has amulet-specific legendary echo rewards, unique echo rewards. So you hit those up, and then there's a chance it'll be devotion. It's going to be an amulet no matter what. The other way to do it to really juice it up is to use Rune of Ascendance, which will give you a guaranteed unique of the type you use. So throw in some sort of craftable amulet into your forge, into your crafting thing. Use Rune of Ascendance. It'll give you back an amulet, and hopefully, eventually, or maybe soon, you'll get a devotion.
And when we're looking at gear, what would you say would be like the #1 stat that's going to scale our damage that we're looking for?
The #1 stat ultimately becomes, weirdly enough, mana. Because the more mana you have, the more you can burn. And because of devotion, which gives you 1 spell damage with smite per 5 missing mana, that'll be the more added damage you get. So this is a really cool and interesting and quirky, weird build that's going to scale mana as high as it can go to get more damage out of it.
Awesome. So it's a reverse mana stacker. I love it.
Yes, exactly.
And how tanky is this build for hardcore players?
This build is relatively tanky. It does suffer from Sentinel's issues with damage over time. It has some of the weakest damage over time defense in the game. But even with that, it still gets relatively tanky. It gets high HP, it gets a lot of armor, and it can get a 100% block chance as well.
So it's a little bit like Champion in Path of Exile. Awesome. Is there any content like Julra or high-level Julra or something that this build can't do? Or would you say you can do most of the content in the game on this build?
This build is capable of doing all of the content.
Awesome. Is there any blessings that's really important for the build?
There aren't any blessings that are really important, but the Grand Bones of Eternity, which is block chance, block effectiveness, is definitely a valuable one for capping out your block chance and adding some block effectiveness. And then the Grand Light of the Moon blessing from Lagan gives you a lot of mana. It gives you more than 10% of your mana easily, maybe even close to 20%. So that's a big one as well.
Now remember, this guide also has a written part on Max Roll by McFluffin. Make sure you check it out. It's super detailed, so amazing. And McFluffin also streams on Twitch. He's an amazing Last Epoch creator. Make sure you check him out. He's going to be streaming non-stop with the Last Epoch launch and will be able to answer any questions or help you with anything you're going to need. So absolutely check him out. Give him some love, and super excited to see you all on the Last Epoch launch, the 21st of February. So thank you so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.